Apple just announced the brand new 12-inch Retina MacBook that the tech world has been waiting for, and while there's a lot of good, there's also a lot of weird. So I'm here to break down 10 things you should know before picking one up. So what's up guys, Jonathan here with TLD. Hope you guys are doing well. And this week kicked off Apple's Spring Forward event. The Apple TV got a price drop, so it is now $69. They expanded upon and gave us a little more info on the Apple Watch, which is hitting shelves next month. But what stood out most to me and what I was most interested in was the new 12-inch Retina MacBook, which I have mixed feelings about, so I want to break it down. First up, and this is probably the most radical change of the new MacBook, and that's the fact that it is now fanless. It utilizes Intel M chips, which only consume 5 watts of power, which translates to less heat and ultimately means no heat pipe or fan is needed. Also, the logic board is small, like really small. For reference, here is the new MacBook's logic board in contrast to the 11-inch MacBook Air. Second up is that these new MacBooks now come in 3 colors: silver, gold, and space gray. Silver's cool, but it's something that we've already seen before. Gold is really attractive and sounds like a good idea on paper, but I'm a little apprehensive to rock one of those out in public and be that guy. Space gray, on the other hand, that is calling my name, and if I do pick one up, that is the route that I will go. Now, real quickly, touching a little bit further upon the design, while the new Retina MacBook is technically thinner and lighter than both the 11 and 13-inch MacBook Air, the thickest part is actually thinner than the MacBook Air's thickest point, but thicker than the MacBook Air's thinnest point. And yes, I realize that's probably a little confusing, but if you break it down, the MacBook Airs are 3mm at its thinnest and 17mm at its thickest, while the new MacBooks are 3.5mm at its thinnest and 13.1mm at its thickest. The new MacBook also weighs in at 2.03 pounds, whereas the 11-inch MacBook Air is 2.38 and the 13-inch is 2.96. And to me, that's a little strange because here we have the MacBook Air. Air represents lightness, and that weighs more than the MacBook that doesn't include the Air name. So to me, that is Apple logic at its finest. So now that we got that fiasco out of the way, the third thing you need to know is that the new MacBook now has a Retina display. Again, this is a 12-inch display, and this boasts a 2304 by 1440 resolution with a total pixel density of 226 pixels per inch. Now, this is also at a 16 by 10 aspect ratio, and to break that down simply, your TV, for example, unless it's like old school 4:3, is probably at 16 by 9. So if you're watching a movie, you're not gonna see the black bars on the top and the bottom unless it's really wide. And this, on the other hand, if you're playing a movie back full screen, you're still gonna see those black bars on the top and the bottom. Now, the fourth thing you need to know is that the built-in camera on these new MacBooks are a complete joke. Sure, we're gonna give you all those pixels on this beautiful display, and we're gonna stick you with a 480p camera. Seriously. And yes, I totally understand this is really just a glorified netbook, but web chat and video chat are one of the things you probably want to use this most for, and you can't even get 720p. So now that I got my potato rant out of the way, the fifth thing you need to know is the breakdown on the CPU specs and actually what is inside these new MacBooks. So these start out at $1299. That's gonna get you a 1.1 gigahertz dual-core Intel Core M processor. The next tier up, which will run you $1599, gets you a 1.2 gigahertz dual-core processor, but that also doubles your storage from 256 gigs to 512. Both of these also can be configured to a 1.3 gigahertz dual-core CPU, but both are locked down to Intel HD Graphics 5300 and 8 gigabytes of 1600 megahertz DDR3 memory. So that means you are locked into these 8 gigabytes of RAM. There is no aftermarket upgrades on these new Retina MacBooks. Now, next up at number 6, and this scares me a little bit, and that's the fact that these new MacBooks run on one single connection. Yes, one connection for the entire MacBook. So this is done through USB-C, and you're gonna be able to charge, transfer, and output through a single connection. And while that may sound magical and clean and simple and revolutionary, it really means you're gonna spend a shitload of money on adapters. Apple's basic adapter, which you're gonna need for most simple tasks, is $80. You can tack on nearly another $100 to that price tag. Now, obviously, there's gonna be third-party adapters and things like that. In fact, there's already some USB-C products out there, which I will link to down below. Now, number 7 is actually a combination of the fanless design, low-power CPUs, and the lack of ins and outs. And that means that this is not gonna be a workhorse laptop. I myself have used both MacBook Airs for editing video, even up to 4K, just for chopping if I had to. But if you're looking to pick one of these up for video editing, I would definitely look elsewhere because these are not gonna be powerhouse machines at all. Now, number 8 is the fact that these new MacBooks have a completely redesigned keyboard. This is a full-size keyboard with individual LED lighting. So instead of rows of LEDs, this is gonna result in better distribution of lighting on the keyboard. It also implements Apple's new butterfly mechanism as opposed to the traditional scissor mechanism. And for a visual on that, allow me to demonstrate. This is the scissors, this is the butterfly. And Apple claims this will allow for a more stable, responsive key that takes up less vertical space with improved stability, uniformity, and control no matter where you press on the key. Now, obviously, this is something I really don't want to touch upon until I can actually try it out for myself and demo it. So definitely stay tuned and subscribe if you haven't already. That way you don't miss out on the full review. Now, alongside the new keyboard, there is also a new trackpad, and that is number 9. To the naked eye, it looks like your traditional trackpad, but there's some different things going on below the surface. Phil Schiller demoed how a traditional trackpad is hinged at the top and utilizes a diving board mechanism where the top end is stiffer and the bottom end is softer. With this, however, you can click anywhere and get the same feel, and it's also adjustable through software as well. At its base, there are 4 force sensors which gauge how much pressure is being applied. So with this, you'll be able to control different aspects on your Mac based on how much pressure you apply. Deep clicks are referred to as force clicks, which activate a gesture. An example would be to force click a file so you can preview, or when you're watching a movie, the deeper you press, the faster it fast forwards. There's also now a taptic engine which brings haptic feedback to the MacBook. So if you ever use a phone where you're typing or clicking, you get a little bit of that vibration sensation just to let you know you've hit it. That's what haptic feedback is, and that is what is coming to these new MacBooks. So last up at number 10 is because the logic board and trackpad take up such little space, that leaves a lot of open room for battery. Now, traditional batteries, those pretty much equaled rectangles, but with Apple's new battery technology, they're able to produce terrace contoured cells, so you're able to fill up the entire space rather than leaving empty real estate. And this allows 35% more than if they use traditional batteries. Now, you might see this and think, oh my God, it's gonna have crazy all day, 2 day, 3 day, all week battery life. But in reality, you're gonna get 9 hours of web use and 10 hours of movie playback. So it's not terrible, and it's gonna get you through the day, but it's not groundbreaking or anything. It just means that they're able to fit a sufficient battery in a really small space. So yeah, that about wraps up these new MacBooks. That was a lot of information. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did and you are feeling like being awesome, make sure to hit that like button. It is much appreciated. And of course, in return, you get a virtual high five at your face. Obviously, these are not coming out until April, but I will have one as soon as they are out. So again, definitely subscribe if you haven't already. Again, this is Jonathan with TLD, and I will see you guys later.